All right, we're live.
Welcome, Zimbabweans at home and abroad, to the Health and Wellness Show with Dr. Praise. I am Patience Tarumba, co founding director of the Rose Gift Foundation, and we work in collaboration with Dr. Praise, and I'm standing in for her today, and she's going to join us in a little bit later. So, as you know, it's the Health and Wellness Show. I hope everyone gets settled in and listens to the very interesting topic that we have today. Quick disclaimer: all content on our show is for educational and information purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek advice from your physician or other qualified health personnel provider. And if you have any questions, please speak to them regarding a diagnosis. If you are on any medication, please continue with that medication. Never disregard professional medical advice. So, today on our show, we are going to speak about a topic that has been doing the rounds on social media, especially in all Zimbabwean social media handles. As you know, this is a health and wellness show. And when we speak about health, we speak about it in all its forms: mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. We cannot speak about health when we have social ills amongst us. We cannot speak about health and wellness when we have issues that affect us and affect our well being as a society in our community. We are extremely saddened to have been reading in the media that there was a case of a 14-year-old girl. Her name was Memory, and she was in the Manicaland area, and she belonged to an apostolic sect. And in that apostolic sect, what happened is she was given as a child bride, as it is their custom in the Marange area in Manicaland. And so now what happened is she unfortunately died immediately after giving birth. So everyone is speaking about this. And as we all know, in Zimbabwe, the legal age to get married is 18. Child marriage is defined as entering into a marital union with a person or persons under the age of 18. The law clearly states that it is 18 years and above in which one can enter into a marital union. But in this case, we have an unfortunate incident where immediately after giving birth, she died and she was buried without her parents, without police, without anything. She was denied medical assistance. The child was born, she had complications, and she died a few hours later or immediately after. Circumstances under which she died are still not clear, but we are thankful, due to the pressure social media, due to the pressure you and I and all other listeners and all other well-wishers and all other stakeholders have been putting. There has been some action that has happened, and investigations are currently underway. So today we've decided to tackle this issue and to speak about child marriages, to speak about what exactly is happening within our communities, because we know how important it is for us to protect the girl child, for us to protect all children, but especially the girl child, as she is prone to more dangers and abuses. So, firstly, I would like to play one voice note from our brother Paul, who works within this community and has done extensive work in this area. And we can hear from him and we can have some discussions.
My name is Paul Shekede, and I've been a medical practitioner in Manicaland for the past 11 years. I have worked for various organizations like Simukai Trust, Plan International, Women's Action Group, Zebai Community Empowerment Trust, and Conscious Development Empowerment Trust. I've worked in all the 7 districts of Manicaland in the issues of child marriages and women empowerment. Child marriages are a very critical issue that is affecting the province of Manicaland. The hardest hit areas being Chipinge district, Mudasa district, Mutare district, as well as Bohera district. The main driving force for child marriages in Manicaland and in Zimbabwe as a whole is the issue of poverty. For the past 2 decades, Zimbabwe has been going under a lot of economic stress. There's been rising levels of poverty, food insecurity, and also a high number of school dropouts. Many parents, especially those that are in the rural areas, are not able to provide for their families due to the economic challenges that we are facing. Yes, the government is doing all it can in order to improve the livelihood of the people, but uh, years of persistent drought, as well as the COVID pandemic, and as well as financial instability within the macroeconomic system of the country, has caused a lot of communities, a lot of people in rural communities to lose their source of livelihood and source of income. And also, another point that is driving child marriages is also the issues of misconceptions of culture and tradition. As you all know, in Africa, culture and tradition play a very pivotal role in people's lives. If, for example, in our African culture, there's the issue of bride price. When many men have developed negative masculinities in the sense that when they pay bride price to a woman, they feel that they now own that woman. That woman is now subservient to that man. She must do whatever the man wants, because the man who says, I paid bride price to your family, and as such, you are my wife, you are under me. And also, when I want to go into the issue of Christianity, the Bible talks about the man being the head of the family and the woman following the man. That verse in the Bible has sort of like been, it has sort of been monopolized and misinterpreted by a lot of men in our African society. They feel that patriarchy or male superiority is justified culturally and religiously, and as such, the issues of women's rights or women's empowerment tend to be overlooked. Another thing that is also um, contributing to this issue of child marriages is the issue of the COVID pandemic. A lot of the COVID pandemic has seen long spells of schools going closed, and this has resulted in many young girls opting to be married rather than going back to school. Food insecurity is also very high in the country. A lot of families are failing to have 3 basic meals a day. In most rural areas, for example, in Manicaland, especially the hardest hit areas like Bohera, Chipinge, where rainfall patterns can be erratic. Um, some families can go for a whole day with just a single meal. They can spend the whole day without eating anything, and maybe in the evening, that's when they cook their sadza and they eat. And as such, it puts the girl child at risk of being exploited by men. There are men who go there, they offer these young girls a sample of the good life, and because of hunger and poverty, many of them tend to succumb to these older men, and hence the issue of child marriages keeps on rising and rising each and every single day. Recently, there was this case which happened in Marange district in Ocha. I've had the privilege of working in Marange, in Mafararikwa, Zipiripiri, Chapeyama. That's where the Johani Marange Apostolic Church is mainly based. Uh, the issue of child marriage is there. It's a topical issue in that area. It's a very complicated issue. The church on one hand says that the marriages that happen are not forced marriages, but rather there is consent between both parties. There's consent between the parents of the children. So as such, they see nothing wrong in it. Plus also, religion is also used to perpetuate child marriages. If you go to Marange today, child marriages is something that is normal in their society. They say that it's something that has been a part of their society for generations, and many people seem to accept it. Even the women themselves who live in that area, they also accept the issue of child marriages. Because when I used to work around those areas, you'd hear a lot of women saying that I got married when I was 13 years old, I got married when I was 14 years old, and the story goes on. And to them, most of the women in those areas, they tend to value marriage. A woman that is not married in that area is looked as a leper or someone with leprosy. They are ostracized from the rest of the community, and this is some of the problems that we are facing in Marange. Many NGOs have gone to work, tried to work in Marange, Childline, Girl Child Network, Plan, World Vision, but along the implementation of their programs, they also faced some form of resistance. As these people saying that the things that you are bringing to us about women's rights, women's empowerment, girl child empowerment, they are foreign to them. They feel that these are ideas or ideologies that are being imposed from them, coming from the Western world. So those are some of the challenges we have. But of all the things that we are facing, poverty is number one in child marriages and also in the issues of women exploitation. There was a case which came to me some time back when I was working to reduce gender-based violence in Chipinge. We came across a young lady who was married, but the husband was so abusive. The neighbors reported the case to us, and when we went there trying to resolve the case, and what she said was that I have no source of economic empowerment. I have no source of economic livelihood. That abusive man is my source of economic livelihood. I have 4 children with that man. And if I report him and if he's arrested, I will not be able to take care of my child. And hence I cannot leave him. So she said that she is waiting for her children to grow up. Once they grow up and they're economically independent, then she can run away from that man. But as things still stand right now, she's still in that abusive marriage because of economic challenges. There was also another story that came to light. A father was sexually abusing his 15-year-old daughter, and the mother knew about it, but she did not report. She did not report her husband. The neighbors tried to report to the police, but when the police came there, they vehemently denied that she was being sexually assaulted. She went for tests, and they saw that she was being sexually assaulted. And the mother went further to protect the husband and saying that yeah, her child was now doing boyfriends at school. And then we asked the girl and we said, what is the problem? And she said that her father is the one who is paying for her school fees. If she reports the father to the authorities, if the father is arrested, no one will be able to pay school fees for her. And that is why she says that she's still staying there, because her mother, she says that her mother is not economically empowered, but the father is economically empowered. Most of the cases of gender-based violence, even the recent case which happened of a 14-year-old girl in Marange who died whilst trying to give birth to a child, uh, the people in those areas are very secretive. They try to hide such cases of child abuse. They try to hide those cases of gender-based violence. So you see that when you try to when you hear a report of that case and you go and try and make a follow up to those areas, the community tends to deny it. They will all deny that such things are happening in their communities, and as such, a lot of cases have gone unreported, and as such, gender-based violence and also the issues of child marriages keep on happening unabated. So those are the challenges we have. In a nutshell, I can say poverty being number one. Poverty is still very high. Food insecurity is still very high. And as such, when an economically disadvantaged family gets an offer, maybe from an elder man, saying that she wants to marry one of their children in return for bride price, most parents tend to succumb to such gestures, because they'll be saying that if they stay with that child, they cannot be able to feed that child. But but if that child is married, they will receive some form of bride price, which they can use to better their lives at that village. And also, when once their child is married, she'll be at a better place than where she is right now.
Oh, that certainly was a lot to take in, and it was very hard to hear that. But unfortunately, it is the sad but true reality on the ground of what is currently happening. At this time, I would like to invite my other guests that are here with me to just have a say on what we've just heard. Hello, doctor, are you there? Hello, doctor, are you there? Okay, we seem to be having a bit of challenges with our connection. Let us try again. Doc, can we have your input, please? I don't think
Yes.
Yes, hello.
Hello, patient.
Hi. Okay, glad we're back on. Yes, that was very difficult to hear from Paul, and Paul has been working on the ground, and this is the everyday cases he deals with. I'd like to hear more from you. What do you have to say about this?
Um, yes, it was very heavy listening to the plight of young women in remote areas of our nation, and the reasons that he cited for these occurrences are very real, especially in the situation that's prevailing in Zimbabwe today, where we have a lot of people unemployed due to the current economic system, And also, due to the COVID-19 lockdown, a lot of people have found themselves with very little to survive on. And for families of young girls, it's easy to see the marriage of their daughter as a way out of a difficult situation. For one thing, to get one mouth to feed off, of their list of mouths to feed. And that is a typical traditional approach that families have had, that they married young women off quite early on, because once she's married, she becomes the responsibility of her husband, so they don't have to worry about at least one mouth to feed. And it is something which is quite tragic to think of, because a young girl as young as 14 should be in school with her age mates. She should be still playing with friends and discovering what life really is about. She's by no means ready to take on a home and become a wife, let alone a mother, because motherhood is a huge responsibility. And any mother you talk to will tell you that, regardless of how many children you have had before, the responsibility of taking care of a whole human being and being fully responsible for their upbringing, for their health, for their nutritional needs, social needs, psychological needs, because that's what a mother is. As a mother, you have to become everything to your child: a teacher, a doctor, a caretaker. And it is difficult enough taking care of oneself as a 14-year-old. You're still learning how to take care of yourself. Then to be expected to take care of a 69-year-old man. As you can imagine, at the age of 69, one's health starts to deteriorate, and he needs more taking care of than he can take care of his wife or wives and children. Then, if you think about the dynamics of a polygamous marriage, which I assume is the kind of situation that this young woman was married into, those dynamics are stressful enough for adult women, let alone for a little child who's still learning her bearings. For me as a woman and a mother, I find it really heartbreaking that there are many young women who are being put through this kind of ordeal in our country. And I feel very frustrated because it feels like there's very little that we can do about it. Because at the end of the day, it really depends on our authorities, on whether they are willing and prepared to enact the laws that would stop these kinds of incidents occurring. But as most of you will probably agree, our leaders, our national leaders, have not shown any interest in the welfare of the citizenry. In fact, they have been known to punish those who try to raise such issues. And so much as we are heartbroken and we are frustrated, we feel helpless to help. Because even if you were to collect funds to go and help, they would need to go through government officials. And with the history of our current leadership, once again, they've been known to take aid meant for the disadvantaged and pocketing it. So it is a heavy, very heavy issue to have to deal with, to try to figure out what we as a nation can do to protect the future of young ladies, which is very important because women are the future of any nation. And when they are married off at a young age and not given a chance to develop themselves, to get an education, naturally their future and the future of their children is doomed. Most likely their female children will face the same fate when they reach that age, the teenage age. And so, as a nation, we cannot afford to be risking the future of our young women because a young woman grows into a mother who determines the quality of education of her children, the quality of life of her children, of her entire family, and even of the extended family. Because we are the ones who instill values in children. We are the ones who raise the presidents of tomorrow. But if we are not equipped to do that, because we were not given a chance at the age of 14, married off, there is no way that we can raise leaders who can pull this country out of the trenches where it is at the moment. So those are my sentiments, my heavy sentiments on this issue. Thank you for the opportunity, patience.
Wow. Yes, this topic is actually a very, very heavy topic. It's very painful. I'm a mother myself, and I cannot for a minute picture my child going through that. You know, I just want to think about the very last minutes of Memory's life. What was going through her mind? What was she feeling? The pain that she was in. You know, she's a child herself, like you said, she's adjusting and getting to know her own body. She's getting to know her, find herself in this world. She doesn't even know who she is at that age. I mean, how many times at that age did we chop and change what we wanted to be when we grew up? We wanted to be this today and a doctor tomorrow and a lawyer then, and she didn't have that chance. We, as a community as well, have failed her, and we will continue to fail her and the many others like her whose names have not been mentioned if we continue to be silent on this issue. Because it might not be your daughter, but it can be the next person that that child could be. she could be somebody who could change this whole country around. She could be somebody who could add value to even your child's life. She could be the next great thing that comes out of this country. But we won't know because we have not given them a fair fighting chance. So at this point in time, we would like to just play back. There's a second clip from Paul Shekede, and we can just hear from him briefly. And we would like to also get to know, please come in with your comments, your questions, your contributions, anything that needs to be said. Okay, and we also have Dr. Chris, who's here. Dr. Chris, is your mic okay now? Are you able to come through now? Okay, while we wait for Dr. Chris to sort out his mic, no problem. Can we just hear from the other second clip from from Mr. Paul Shekede, please?
Religion and culture are playing a very pivotal role in the perpetuating of gender-based violence and child marriages in Zimbabwe. Culturally, the issue of bride price paying has seen many women fall vulnerable to their husbands due to the fact that their husbands would have paid the bride price for them. So, as such, many women find it difficult to raise their heads or to challenge their husbands in critical issues that may affect their families. Others are beaten, and when they are beaten and when they try to report it or try to tell their relatives will tell them to keep quiet because their husband paid lobola or bride price. There's a Shona saying which says that Hanzi imba inoshingirirwa. And this notion is the one that has been fed into many of our women, particularly those that are staying in the rural areas. They are told that marriages has got its ups and downs. What a woman needs to do is to stay strong in that marriage. And because of that, a lot of women endure a lot of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse in marriages or relationships because of that fact that imba inoshingirirwa. Also, on the issue of tradition, Africa, just like Africa as a whole, Zimbabwe included, has had serious cases of patriarchy. A lot of women fall subject or fall victim to the issue of patriarchy. And in many districts that we operate in Chipinge, Chimanimani, Bohera, Makoni, and Nyanga, a lot of women are told that the man is the head of the house. The man is the provider in the family. The man is the sole decision maker in the family. His word is law. And as such, a lot of women do not have a say in how households are governed or how household development can take place. And this is one of the issues that has really weighed down on women, the issue of patriarchy. Religion is also plays a part in the abuse of women, like the recent case which I highlighted to enjoy of memory, a 14-year-old girl who died whilst giving birth in Mafararikwa there in Marange in Mutare district. Some religious sects tend to abuse religion. They tend to, women are subjected to abuse through the use of tradition. Tradition is wrongly defined in those communities, and it is used as a way to perpetuate the abuse of women. Now, the question that will be on many people's minds, that given all these abuses, how best can we try to solve these issues? Well, as a development practitioner who has had vast experience working in Manicaland, I can propose a few solutions which I think, if fully implemented, can can go a long way in addressing the issue of child marriages and GBV. No development partner on their own can eradicate the issue of gender-based violence. It needs a multi-sectoral approach. We need to involve the traditional leaders. We need to involve the churches. We need to involve the political leadership. We need to involve the business community and the community at large, in trying to come up with solutions to address the issue of child marriages and abuse of women and girls. Where I'm currently attached at Women's Action Group, we are currently embarking on a campaign called Peace Begins at Home. We noticed that the majority of gender-based violence or child marriages happen in communities at a village level. That's where it all starts. If we can try to change the mental state of the people in a particular village on how they view gender-based violence and the child marriages, we can try, or it can go a long way in creating a lasting change. So what we are proposing is like, we involve the traditional leadership. Traditional leaders like the village heads, the headmen and the chiefs are the custodians of culture and the tradition within societies. What they say in communities holds water and ground. So what we need to do is to try and include those traditional leaders in the fight against the GBV and the child marriages. We need to incorporate them in the fight against the GBV. So we are proposing is that we train traditional leaders in all the rural communities of Manicaland, and if possible Zimbabwe, so that they have a clear understanding of what GBV is all about, and also the negative impacts of child marriages in as far as child development is concerned. I've noticed that a lot of our traditional leaders don't really understand what we mean when we say gender-based violence or sexual abuse or child marriages. They are guided by tradition, and some of our traditions and the cultures that have been in place tend to perpetuate the issues of GBV. Long back in these areas, we used to have issues of child pledging, kuripangozi. When it's like when when a family member kills someone, usually they would appease the family of the deceased with a young girl. And this practice, it is long, it's now rare. It's still there, but it's now very rare. So that's one thing that we need to do. We need to incorporate the chiefs and the traditional leadership in the fight against uh, GBV. We also need to create partnerships with the religious community, churches. Churches play a pivotal role within our communities. But as of late, churches and the traditional leaderships have always been in constant clash on how we can address the issues of GBV. We need a multicentral approach. We need to get the traditional leadership and the religious leaders working together in trying to address this problem. We need to try to find a common ground between religion and tradition so that we are able to address such issues. And we also need to include the government. Government as the chief policy implementer and formulator needs to be there. Government departments need to be very active, need to work hand in glove with the churches and also the traditional leaders in trying to address this problem of GBV. We also need to include the development the development field. We also need to include the NGOs and the civil society organizations. We also need to include the business community because the fight against the GBV is not a fight for civil society groups alone. It's a fight for every one of us. And in this regard, as Women's Action Group, we have formulated what we call peace huts. A peace hut is a community platform which we establish together with the traditional leaderships, the community themselves, government, as well as other partners in trying to address the issue of GBV. We've also included schools. It's like a committee at village level, which includes a representative from government, a representative from the traditional leadership, a representative from the religious sector, a representative from the business sector, as well as a representative from the political side, in trying to come together and come up with a fight against GBV. So the peace huts are an initiative which we are doing, and we hope that it can take shape so that it can be used or replicated in other provinces or other countries within our region.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, doctor.
Yeah. I just want to comment on one or two things. There's no point in me talking about the stuff that has been talked about already, like poverty and stuff like that. I just want to talk about a couple of issues that are actually at the center of this issue of child marriages. I don't accept the premise that, or the argument that religion is part of it. I don't agree with that. I'm sorry to deviate. But there are pedophiles within certain religions. I don't think all religious sects do contribute to child marriages. I mean, if you go to the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, Zion, and other churches, such things don't happen. Why is it that this issue of child marriages is deeply embedded within the Apostolic Church? I've got nothing against the Apostolic Church. But for all intents and purposes, in some respects, they have done very well in contributing to community development. But there is an element of pedophilia within those churches. They are pedophiles, they are sexual predators within that church who actually use the name of the religion to protect them. These are sexual pests that actually prey on unfortunate young children, most of whom are not educated. And they are not educated because of those gender disparities that Paul has just tried to explain. Because girls are forced to drop out from school at a young age, and given a choice, parents would rather have a girl drop out of school than a boy, on the premise that the boy can work and sustain the family and be responsible for the continuance of the name of the family, which is unfortunate, really. And that lack of education is quite harmful because it affects their social skills, the girls' social skills. It affects any opportunities that they might find, because if they are not educated, they are not able to find economic opportunities that can sustain themselves. Then, as a result, they are forced to, I mean, indulge into sex with older men who are economically more advantageous than themselves. And of course, there's the issue of parental consent. Some parents consent that these children can actually be married to these pedophiles. I call them pedophiles, and I'm not going to withdraw my wording for that. And this issue of cultural practices, I also don't think the culture allows us to abuse young children. I don't think so. I think the culture is very clear. It is people who misuse or abuse cultural practices to their advantage. They're envious of young children, especially those that look bigger than their age. They are easily taken advantage of. So for me, we can of course mention the issue of religion, but I think within those religious sects, within that religious fraternity, there are pedophiles and sexual pests who actually used to work under cover of that religion. And why is it that it's only one main religion that is responsible for that? That's the biggest question we should ask ourselves. And unfortunately, that church is the one that is associated with top government officials. You find most government officials wearing those white garments because in most cases they will have been promised that once there's a reshuffle, you will be appointed minister, or if you want to survive, this is what you have to do. So they pay a blind eye when it comes to scrutinizing the activities of those churches. And we can also talk about the issue of legal loopholes. There are significant legal loopholes in Zimbabwe regarding the child protection in general, as opposed to here in the UK. I'm based in England, where the laws are more enforceable. And if you engage in child abuse, you will face the wrath of the law. The law will come after you, regardless of what position you hold. I'm sure those that are following news today, you will have come across on Twitter or other broadsheets a story about Prince Edward, who is being pursued by American authorities for allegedly being and having sex with underage children. So the law in other countries, apart from our country and a few other local African states, do not enforce the laws that they have. There is a Children's Act in Zimbabwe, which should be followed, which should be enforced. But nobody does that. People pay a blind eye. I remember myself and a few other people, we tried to influence some legislators so that they could introduce what is called a sex offenders register. Here in the UK, there is what they call a sex offenders register. If you are if you are involved in child abuse and you are charged in a court of law, even fondling with a child, like chiramu, that chiramu that we do, touching your wife's sister's buttocks or breast, that can land you in jail. In not only in UK, I've worked in Australia as well, even in Australia, even in the United States. But in our country, for some reason, we don't seem to want to protect our own children. And I don't know why we can't have a sex offenders register, so that those that are repeat offenders can be banned. Here, if your name is on the register, you are banned from having any interaction with a child that is under the age of 16 years for the entirety of your life. That's the punishment. But I understand because of the levels of development in our country and the lack of institutional capacity to enforce some of those laws, it can be a monumental task or a Herculean task for our law enforcement officers to enforce. So, and the other issue that we need to look at is what are the effects of child marriages, and there are many. You see, things like increased risk for STIs, cervical cancer, death during birth, among others, and it can also lead to intergenerational cycle of poverty, because the child who is born of a child themselves, in most cases, they do not have the opportunity to go to school, and the child mother does not have the capacity to actually kind of encourage their child to go to school, or in many cases, they don't even have the financial means to do that. Then, lastly, I want to talk about what can be done to try and arrest that problem. Of course, I spoke about legal loopholes. That is a big issue. Paul spoke about engaging in a multi-sectoral effort to bring everyone together, you see, to talk about it. That's a very good idea. But it starts with government. Government has got representatives, people that are elected by the people, whose sole job is to go back to the people and consult about their views about child marriages. Then once they've gathered that information, they can come back to Parliament and say, this is what we need to discuss. This is the direction that we need to take in order to ameliorate or to mitigate the rise in child marriages. And of course, the issue of poverty is a structural issue that requires the entirety of the government machine to address, in terms of ensuring that young children that are of school-going age go to school, and where they are not able to pay for school, government can actually introduce policies that ensure that those people access education. Then obviously you have to have empowerment policies that are effective, empowering young people to actually advocate and campaign against child marriages. I think there are even YMCA and a number of other youth organizations that exist in Zimbabwe that can actually be used to drive home the message that child marriages are not allowed. They can, like fees must fall a campaign in South Africa. You can actually draw some analogies from how they've done it in South Africa and try and apply it to Zimbabwe. I know some of those proposals that I'm stating today are fraught with practical difficulties, but at least it's a starting point. And obviously, you have to look at providing safe spaces and support networks for the girls. You have to have. I know people like Dr. Betty Makone. She runs an organization here in the UK. I think she's got branches as well in Zimbabwe. Such organizations can also be used to drive home the message. What you need is as many people as possible in a complementary approach to try and address this issue. Then obviously you also need to help families to understand the consequences of child marriages. Of course, some of them do understand, but they will tell you that we are poor, there are things that we can do to stop this. And the other thing that I find very difficult to understand is that our government is actually a signatory to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which actually specifies that no child should be subjected to arbitrary or unlawful interference with his or privacy, family home, or correspondence, no unlawful attacks on them. It's something that our government should actually pay particular attention to, give more potency actually than other things that they spend a lot of effort and money on. But this thing is not, it's not an event, it's a process which will take generations. It's a process that is also embedded within the wheels of development, and it's a process that requires everyone to be involved. It's a process that is that should actually be at the center of both parties. As we go to 2023, I would be more than happy to hear as many stories as possible, as many policies as possible that are aimed at trying to resolve this issue. I don't want to dominate this discussion. I realize there are people with other more valid points that also want to contribute. So with those words, I can stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you for that insight. I love the way that you shed light and contrast of how it is with enforcing laws, regulation, legislation, everything, and the roles that we need to sit up and take. And I really love the fact that you actually called a spade for what it is. That's pedophile behavior and nothing else. Because in which religion really that would teach authentic, proper love, care, respect for one another would enforce that? I don't think so. So at this point in time, would just like to ask, give it over to anyone that has comments, that has questions, any additions that they would like to add.
Hi, Patience.
Hi, go through.
Okay, pretty normal. I just want to add on the multisectoral approach, on the role of the media in bringing to these early child marriages. It's like most people, when they heard the story of memory, seem shocked that such a thing is happening. The reason why they were shocked is because media is not giving such stories prominence, I think. So you'll find that people only talk about these issues when something bad strikes. And that's when people pick up the issue and boils, and then cools down again. We wait for another issue again that will make us start talking about it. I think the media should normalize talking about these issues, educating people, being the surveillance role. We should be knowing more about these issues by hearing or seeing them on the media more often. And the media should also expose such ills that are happening within communities, and also raising awareness on the implications of marrying. We can't just say end child marriages. Maybe some people do not even understand what happens if they marry off their young girl. The problems of early pregnancies, some leading to death, some leading to obstetric fistula. Such things are people who are practicing such beliefs or
Practices.
could violate their daughters or children's rights. Then the other issue again is that maybe, since I think Mr. Shekede mentioned that the consent is given between parents of children, but do they know that by doing that, marrying off a young girl, they are violating human rights? These are some of the issues that media should not be talking about when there is disaster, but constantly talking about these issues so that people are conscientized. They know that if I'm marrying off my daughter, whether it's poverty or religion or whatever that is making me do that, I am violating her rights, and I can be arrested for that. And also some of the programs that were broadcasted on radio, or some of these dialogues that we are having, we shouldn't have them when there is a disaster or when there is something bad that has happened. It should be an ongoing conversation that we constantly talk about, so that people are aware this is what is happening. It's at a place, let's talk about it. What do we do about it? Not talking about these issues here and there, as if it's an occasional thing that happens and then it cools down. It's no longer happening until disaster strikes again. I think that's my addition to the discussion.
Thank you, Pretty. And we want to thank you also as well for the work that you are doing as Amakosikati Media, and you engaging and keeping us up to date with the information and everything. We see the work even on Twitter and everything, and I hope it's going to be a message to all of us to say we engage with the media and we report more on these stories that are happening and have open discussions, because I believe when we begin to speak about these things, when these things come to light and we begin to educate people on what needs to happen and everything that we've been discussing, I think it can move towards us making a path in which we can work towards eradication of child marriages. And I would just like to add that may this not just end as a discussion because we've been hyped up about what happened to memory. You know, there are children in Asia, there are children in other parts of the world, there are children in other parts of Africa, there are children in Ethiopia that get married off as young as 7 years old. And it is happening right now. So I think it's time we need to take a stand and look at it from all angles. And we look at each other. And one of the things I'm emphasizing is accountability. Let us be our brother's keepers. If we see things that are happening, let us educate, conscientize one another, and let us be accountable. These children are the future. The girl child is more than just a commodity. So on that note, would like to just check if there are any other messages or any other comments from our other host. Estelle, anything? Okay.
Yeah, we do have a question from one of our listeners, Bavulani Mugeni, as this sad news of a poor girl died in the hands of Mazidara Anemikwepe Yendevu Chena and so-called Vanambuya Vemuma Apository. Zimbabwean authorities, vaita sei so far nenyaya iyi? I think that's a very pertinent question. What has the government so far done about this? Have they made any investigations? Have they made any arrests?
Yeah, okay. As far as I have been reading in the media, they have opened a case. It's now murder that they were investigating, according to the reports, and CID was sent there. The intelligence. Yes, they were going to homicide. Specifically, was going to investigate, and we also understand that. As well, there's a certain department in the Ministry of Women's Affairs and issues like that. A team has been dispatched down there to go and investigate, as well as a few other business leaders and some religious leaders have come out and they've been speaking against it. But no arrests have been made to date, as far as I know. Maybe Pretty can have a little bit more on that. Do you have a bit more information on that, Pretty? Okay, maybe we don't have her. Yes. Okay, at this point, can Melody please come through?
Hello.
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Please come through.
After her death, so painful. But somewhere, someone out there knew about this, that memory has been married at such a tender age. So I played for the villagers. It takes a village to raise a child. So it's our wish that the villagers can be our eyes and ears to see what is happening and to spread the word that it's not good to um, get to put a child in any marriage. I know somewhere, someone out there like the husband, the co-wives, and so many more as in a polygamy marriage. So the co-wives, how can they feel like to say a husband with a 14-year-old child? It's so safe. So I'm sure when we do awareness, um, people out there will help the girl child and like informing the authorities like this is happening to this um, child is still underage. So I'm sure the community and the whole village will help us help and raise the girl child. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, indeed, it does need. It's a village. It takes a whole village to raise a child, and we, like I did say, we are our brothers' keepers. We are our sisters' keepers, and we can't say that we're working towards any form of development if in the communities, in right in the fiber of our very beings, in our backyards, we are looking at such instances. So, at this point in time, I'd just like to ask Estelle, do you have anything else to add before we say goodbye to our viewers?
Just to agree with what Dr. Chris said, that this is primarily a developmental issue. Um, as a nation, as you pointed out, we are not at that level of development where we can implement and institute um, changes in belief systems, in cultural practices, even in enforcement of our laws, to the level where such cases. Oh, is there an echo? I can't hear you.
Okay, but we can hear you.
Yes, and so indeed the solution is the spread of information, bringing everyone to understand the the pitfalls and the disadvantages of allowing such things to happen in our societies, even if it does not affect us directly, but to understand how, from a national level, such such occurrences hold us back as a nation, uh, in terms of our labor force, in terms of future generations. As you pointed out, patience, we should all be our brother's keeper and care for what happens to a fellow Zimbabwean, not because we gain personally, like we benefit personally from their well-being, but to understand that for Zimbabwe as a nation to develop, for Zimbabwe as a nation to fare well, every Zimbabwean must be brought together into the next level of development. As long as we have some Zimbabweans who are in in remote areas where they don't have access to information and poverty reigns, Zimbabwe as a nation cannot develop, and it cannot fare well among other nations. I think that is what I would like to add. Patience. Thank you for this opportunity to air more of my views.
Thank you, and special thank you to everyone that has taken the time to come onto this show. A special thank you to all our listeners, to everyone that has contributed, everyone that will share the link and pass it on. I pray that it's not just going to end with us today, that we will continue speaking about it. Let Memory's death not be in vain. I know there are many others before her that have passed. There are many other more gruesome stories that we don't know about. There are children younger than her that have died in worse tragic situations, all in the name of being child brides, child marriages. Those are not marriages, those are rapes. That there is no way a marriage, something which is beautiful, something which is a union that is to bring joy, that is to bring wholesomeness and happiness and protection, can bring out, it can be something ugly like that. There is no way. So I don't even feel comfortable calling it child marriages. Those are like child rapes. So thank you, and on behalf of Dr. Praise, who's out in surgery right now, and the co-founding director of the Rose Gift Foundation, we would just like to say thank you so much. Please continue to keep light and share.
Our cast of speakers here on health and well-being